What's the trashiest wedding you've been to? I remember it was about a decade ago when I checked into a massive hotel. One of those sprawling places with multiple wings, endless hallways, and more conference rooms and ballrooms than you'd ever find a reason to use. I was traveling for work, so I was just there for a night or two before continuing on to the next city. The place was so large that it felt a bit impersonal. Polished marble floors, brass fixtures, and a neatly dressed staff who smiled politely but never seemed to make eye contact for too long. After a long day of meetings and phone calls, I decided I deserved a nightcap. The hotel bar was tucked off to the side of the lobby, just past a quiet lounge area with low-slung couches and a grand piano. It was late, but still early enough for a few other guests to be nursing drinks or catching the end of some televised sports game. I headed up to the counter and took a seat, tapping my fingers idly on the polished wood surface. Just as I was about to order, a man approached me out of nowhere. He was tall, lanky, and wore what looked like loose-fitting linen pants that might once have been white, but had since become an indeterminate shade of grayish beige. His hair was long and tangled, he sported a scraggly beard, and he smelled faintly of sweat and damp cotton. He had a friendly, slightly dazed smile as he leaned in. "Hey," he said, voice low and, "we're having a wedding reception in the ballroom tonight, and there's way too much food and alcohol. You want to join us?" Before I could fully process the invitation, he nodded encouragingly. "We're celebrating. Come on, man." Now, I'm not usually one to crash someone's wedding celebration, but free food and drinks at the end of a long day sounded tempting. Besides, the guy didn't seem to think I'd be intruding. He seemed genuinely happy to have a stranger join in. I took a moment to imagine the scene. Maybe a lively party with an open bar, a decent buffet, and a chance to meet some interesting people before heading up to my room. I shrugged. "Sure, why not?" I said, curiosity getting the best of me. As we made our way toward the ballroom, I noticed the distinct smell long before I reached the double doors. It was a thick, humid odor, a mix of body heat, sweat, stale air, and something else that might have been either incense or just leftover cooking fume. The hallway leading to the ballroom was dimly lit, and once we stepped inside, I realized just how large the space was. Under different circumstances, this ballroom might have hosted a black tie gala, a corporate function, or a high-end wedding reception with crystal chandeliers and elegantly dressed guests. Tonight, though, it had the vibe of an indoor music festival gone off the rails. People milled about with barely any sense of order, some leaning against the walls, others sprawled out on the floor. A few wore loose tie-dye clothing, and quite a number of them wore almost nothing at all. No shoes, no shirts, and a general preference for ragged cutoffs and flowing scarves. Both men and women were wandering around barefoot, beads of sweat glistening on their skin. I spotted at least two topless individuals passing around a communal pitcher of something that looked suspiciously homemade. The air was hot, heavy, and utterly stifling, like someone had cranked the thermostat and then thrown a wet blanket over the ventilation system. Instead of a DJ behind turntables or a band with a clear set list, there was a single performer on stage surrounded by an array of instruments. I saw drums, bongos, a guitar, a rain stick, and something that looked like a didgeridoo. He was tapping out a rhythm that was more experimental noise than recognizable melody. Every now and then he'd hit a jarring chord on the guitar or blow a strange note through the didgeridoo, and some of the guests would cheer or sway as if under a spell. I did my best not to look taken aback. After all, I'd been invited. Politeness dictated that I at least pretend to be comfortable. The smell, however, was borderline overwhelming. It reminded me of a summer music festival, Porta-John line combined with a yoga studio after a hot Bikram session. The temperature felt like it had jumped 10 degrees just walking through the door. I made a beeline for the food table, trying to maintain a casual, appreciative smile. The spread looked eclectic. Grilled vegetables, a few random platters of bread and dip, some kind of grain salad, and skewers of what I hoped was grilled chicken. Honestly, my appetite wasn't great by that point, thanks to the funky odor and the intense humidity. I picked the safest-looking item I could find, grilled asparagus, still bright green and not too wilted, and placed a few spears on a small plate. I wasn't about to be rude and walk out empty-handed, but I also wasn't ready to linger. The people around me seemed friendly enough, though I did feel a lot of curious eyes. Maybe they were curious because I was still fully clothed, with shoes on, not swaying to the beat of the didgeridoo. I offered a generic nod or two, and as soon as the groomsmen who had invited me lost sight of me, I quietly slipped back out into the hallway. The cool air outside the ballroom was like a gift, and I breathed a sigh of relief, heading straight back to the bar where I'd started. I didn't stay at the bar for long. I finished my drink and went up to my room, chuckling to myself at the odd turn my evening had taken. The next morning, I ventured downstairs in search of coffee before checking out. As I passed the ballroom area, I noticed it was cordoned off, with yellow caution tape stretched across the entryway. A small team of the hotel's housekeeping staff worked diligently, sweating as they hauled huge trash bags into rolling garbage bins. The smell from the night before had apparently lingered. I got a faint whiff even out in the hallway. It looked like it would take them hours to clear out all the debris. I felt a pang of sympathy for the housekeeping crew. They hadn't asked for this. They were just doing their job, cleaning up a scene that had likely tested the limits of their professional composure. They stacked bag after bag, the remnants of a wedding reception that had clearly spiraled into something more akin to a barefoot hippie commune gathering. I couldn't help but admire their patience and fortitude.